Huddle around as Climbing the Pocket Network presents Jason and the boys talking everything Minnesota Vikings. Watch the countdown timer.
Away we go again. Lost like I'm lost on purpose. If found, please return to. Girl, don't you know I'm lost on the road? I've been here before. When I get home, girl, don't you know I'm lost on the road? I've been here before. When I get home, my vision blurry, I'm paying the cost. I'm not enough. In fact, it's even better when you're not involved. When I miss your call, I feel that I evolve. Cause at your mention, I am more dependent than a college student on their parents or an old person on their pension. Not to mention when you hit me on WhatsApp without attention. And a bad booty bitch walks in, she looks tempting. Look, my Achilles heel is when I say what I feel, you say, baby, come home. And I don't think that I will, cause all this motherfucking stress is gonna get me killed. Girl, don't you know I'm lost on the road? I've been here before. When I get home, girl, don't you know I'm lost on the road? I've been here before. When I get home,
Huddle around as Climbing the Pocket Network presents Jason and the boys talking everything Minnesota Vikings.
No, I can't play these games. No, you can't disrespect and call me names. Sending me signals like you about to switch lanes. Well, go on, do your thing. Go on, do your thing. I mix champagne and propane, get lit. I'm trying to forget all the things that you said, all the things that we did. Girl, don't you know I'm lost on the road? I've been here before. When I get home, girl, don't you know I'm lost on the road? I've been here before. When I get home, watch the breakdown. And I get home when I get home. You just gonna act like we normal now. Good luck. Don't you try to call me with that bullshit, telling me you're sorry. You act too quick. That's somebody else's problem now. You're somebody else's problem now. Don't you try to call me with that bullshit, telling me you're sorry. You act too quick. That's somebody else's problem now. You're somebody else's problem now.
Hey everybody, it's Dave here, and we're excited to start off Climbing the Pocket Networks in the Huddle. Tonight, we're going to be discussing a lot of things as the Viking season ends, and we're looking forward to what's in the future. Jason, it's all yours, buddy.
Thanks, David. And yes, we are. I guess we're excited. The Viking season has mercifully come to a close to let us look forward and maybe have some hope for things to switch up, be different, and maybe not. Maybe we'll just talk about what we hope will happen. Maybe not have hope. We'll just talk about what we hope will happen. But before we get to all that, as David said, I will be your host today. My name is Jayson Brown. You can find me on Brown Twitter, and I'm going to throw it over to
Brown
my man.
Twitter, huh?
Oh, my Brown Jason on Twitter. Jesus Christ, it's been a minute. Well, all right, and we're back. Miles, thank you for the correction.
What up?
How you
What
doing,
up?
wide receiver one?
I'm doing pretty good. I don't know. You mentioned you had said though we're going to talk about the things we want to do, and I just don't know if I can do that because it just breaks my heart every time when I talk about the things that I would like to see the team do, and they obviously do the opposite. So we'll see about that.
All right. And rolling it along, we got the man. He's back. The Vaseline has been taken off the camera lens. He is here with the new crisp webcam for your viewing pleasure. Nick, my man, how you doing? How you been?
I'm good, man. Yeah, I upgraded the camera for Christmas, so we're all in here. We're invested. So I was honestly glad to get like this Viking season over and done with. I don't know if I would have wanted to watch us get blown out by the Saints or something in the playoffs. Another 7 Alvin Kamara touchdowns. No, thank you. So I mean, it's a disappointing season, but I'm ready for cryptic Twitter. I'm ready for Everson Griffin tweeting him to come back. I'm ready for people, ready for all that drama. So. The draft is fun. Free agency, bring it on.
Here we go. And last but certainly not least, the man, the myth, the legend, the Flip Mazzi. How you doing, my man?
I'm doing well. I guess I'm the least excited person here because all that stuff that Nick's excited for, just not for me, bro. I all these mock drafts. I scroll on Twitter until I hit a mock draft, and then I just automatically exit the ad. So,
well, we're doing it for you. We're trying to help you get some balance back in your life, Flip. Get you back outside enjoying the beautiful weather in California.
Yeah, I picked up some golf clubs, so that'll be the new Sunday hobby. There
we go. Well, Nick, you're back, and so I'm going to throw you on the spot first, and you get to break down the wonderful game we got to witness between the Vikings and the Lions this past weekend. What were your thoughts?
Yeah.
How did you see things going? Your man, Kirk Cousins, put up some fantastic numbers, got over 4,000 yards. Justin Jefferson breaking records. Talk to me, Nick.
It was like a legitimately fun game. There were like 8 lead changes. It was a high-scoring affair. Crazy things happened. Justin Jefferson broke Randy Moss's rookie franchise receiving record and then broke the all-time NFL record for rookie receiving yards. That's pretty exciting. So, yeah, it was like a meaningless – it was almost like a preseason game, but much like Mike Zimmer's other preseason games, it was a lot of fun. So the entertainment value was high. Jefferson obviously had a great game. We saw some good stuff from the young guys. Gladney had some mistakes with his sort of wrapping up after the tackle and stuff, but he was really good in coverage. He allowed like 2 catches for 8 total yards in the game, so that was good to see. Everyone else on defense wasn't as great, but Smith had the pick and Harris had a drop pick and a couple other nice plays. But the other corners, Dantzler was hurt, so kind of had Chris Jones and people you had never heard of before getting picked on. Cordia Tankersley, Tay Hayes or something. I was like, who is 32 in this game? I get paid to cover this team. Who is 32? But yeah, it was fun. Stafford had we got the full Stafford experience where he had like crazy bombs downfield, but also throwing it straight to defenders. So I don't know. That was kind of like the Vikings season in a wrap. Like the offense was fun. It was productive. The defense, there was some interesting, there was some nice play from the coverage guys, but pass rush was generating zero pressure, and it was a high scoring game and ultimately a 1-score game. And this one they happened to pull away with. And
Myles, you came very close to predicting the score on this one beforehand.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts? You knew this game was going to go like this. So what were your thoughts watching it as things played out live?
The refs did not want the Lions to win that game. 100%. No, the refs were bad, and the roughing the passer call, that was ridiculous. That's probably I don't think I've seen a worse call in the history of the NFL, at least that I can think of. I'm sure there's other ones that I'm not thinking about, but like that one was bad. And it just the way the ref just so casually threw the flag out, like it was like so obvious. It threw me on a 4th and goal. Like it literally changed the entire landscape of the game because I'm not saying the Vikings still end up losing that game, but they might have lost.
It cost you your draft pick, Myles.
Yeah, we could have the 11th pick.
The refs always screwing us, man.
Always. Hey, we should have just pulled the Eagles, took Kirk out, put some Sean Mannion in, and we could have figured it out. No, the offense was. So what I wanted to touch on, I expected this to be a high-scoring game. Both offenses are pretty solid. Both quarterbacks like to throw the ball around, and both defenses suck. So there's a lot of great like to Nick's point, a lot of fun. That, like as a fan, you just get to watch a lot of really good football or fun football. I won't say good all the time, but fun football. Get that off the screen.
Yeah,
I can't. What I wanted to touch on is so Dalvin Cook was gone. So condolences to him and his family. Terrible situation, losing his father. You hate hearing that. Hate to hear the fact that he couldn't play in the last game. But obviously more worried about him and his family than anything. But since he didn't play the last game. One thing I wanted to touch on is what I noticed in the offense without Dalvin Cook is they did not focus on a singular player or a singular focus on the run game. Like when Dalvin Cook's in the game, they so much prioritize getting him the football, especially in the run game. And I understand how talented he is. I understand how good of a player. So you want to get your good players the football. 100% with that. But what I noticed on Sunday was they decided to mix in different running backs. Flip, we've talked about this ad nauseum, is the fact that they should be rotating in running backs like crazy. Alexander Madison played pretty well, but he also did well in the passing game. Amir Abdullah, I think they finally utilized him the best way that they should have been doing all season. He should have been the de facto third down, screen back, stuff like that, because he's really good in those areas. He's good. He's the best route runner in the running back room. They finally used him in that way on Sunday. Not to say he's anything special, but in terms of what they have at skill sets, he's the best one at that. So it was nice to see a little bit of all those guys, getting their opportunities and then still opening up the passing game, getting guys like Justin Jefferson involved all over the field. Adam Thielen was kind of like a non-factor, which is crazy. They put up 37 points. Kirk threw for over 400 yards, and Adam Thielen was kind of just there. Not to say he played bad or anything, but they definitely looked at Irv Smith, Justin Jefferson. They kind of prioritized a little bit of the other younger guys. And Chad fucking Beebe. Chad Beebe with the touchdown. Like Nick said, it was a really entertaining game. But I thought the offense in general was nice to kind of see them spread the ball around and we have a new wide receiver one. I mean, we've kind of been in this limbo for a while. We've argued about who's the wide receiver one for years between Diggs and Thielen. We definitely have that change now. I mean, I think it's easy to say that heading into next year, Justin Jefferson should be considered the wide receiver one. He gives you the most explosive ability on the offensive side of the ball. He's the guy that can win it all over the field. And I think letting Adam Thielen continue in his role as what he's been doing is still going to be really effective for what this team can do.
Yeah. And Flip, you got to see a lot of the things that you've been asking for since week 1. Unfortunately, it was week 17 and the game didn't really matter all that much. But I guess, how did you feel watching this one?
We saw, it seemed like we saw a lot of wrinkles, and you continue to be impressed by the young foundation that this team has and hopefully has. Nick's the film guru, so I'll defer to him, but it seemed like what Myles was saying, we saw more different running backs in the backfield. We saw multiples in terms of formation. We saw a lot of creativity. We saw even ball distribution, all the things we want to see. It's funny that for the Vikings, it's like an experiment, just doing what other offenses are doing on the regular. It's like, okay, the Vikings are going to wait till week 17 to experiment with those ideas, but at least we saw them work. It was I'm not going to take anything major away from playing that Detroit Lions defense, but it is good to see. It's encouraging for the young players to get a win and play well to finish the year. And now it's a question of, can we take that momentum forward and learn the right lessons from what we saw in week 17?
Well, Flip, speaking of learning the right lessons, because you were a bit fired up, there were some quotes that came out of a Mike Zimmer press conference as we kind of look back on the season, think about the season that was, and then kind of spin forward into maybe how we're going to adjust or learn from mistakes we may have made. And, Mike Zimmer said some things that you didn't really love. They got you really fired up. Walk me through it, Flip. What was it that Mike Zimmer was doing and saying that really just made you feel like, it is absolutely time to go in a different direction based on what you were hearing from him?
Yeah, maybe it's just perceived by me, but I loved the Mike Zimmer who walked into this building, walked into the Minnesota franchise in 2014 and turned things around. And he did that with a no-nonsense attitude. When a player was injured, he didn't care. He was going to coach up the next guy. When a player wasn't playing well, he didn't care. He was going to bench that player or tell him outright publicly that player wasn't cutting it. And those things are really what changed the culture here in Minnesota. And, you know, it was just so different coming from Brad Childress and Mike Tice and Leslie Frazier going to that no-nonsense Mike Zimmer. Well, if you listen to Mike Zimmer now, he sounds a lot like Leslie Frazier, you know, in how, yes, he's accepting blame, but a lot of just the ideas of how you coach and manage this roster and move forward are just really complacent, back-footed. You got no control over injuries. Of course, injuries happen, but you have no control on whether they happen again. So to just sit back and say, oh, it was due to the injuries, that doesn't help you prepare for the next season any better. And in general, this team has always handled success poorly. You talk about how they're good every other year. That's because they don't learn the right lessons when they're good. And you talk about Mike Zimmer's low floor or high floor, low ceiling. That's because when they get to like an 11-5 or a playoff win, they're almost satisfied with that success and not actually shooting for the ultimate goal of winning a Super Bowl. So sure, it's okay that we're unhealthy. I still expect us to make the playoffs when we're unhealthy. I get that we're going to be a lot better when we do have, you know, Anthony Barr, Eric Kendricks. I get that we're better, but I don't want us to just be better and be a playoff team. I want a healthy Minnesota Vikings squad to challenge for a Super Bowl. And there was no talk about trying to win a championship next year, about how far we fell short of our goal. Somehow it was a failure just because we didn't make the playoffs. It wasn't a huge failure because we should have been challenging for that Super Bowl. So 2021, again, we need to ask ourselves, are we going to compete for a Super Bowl? Yes or no? And that's a question I have for y'all.
Well, real quick too, I think the point of that flip is the every other year situation is we go from a disappointing non-playoff team and then vault ourselves into a Super Bowl contender. How like that's where my issues have been, is like that lack of inconsistency. How are you going to go from we're not even a playoff caliber team this year, and I understand the injuries, but overall, like not a playoff caliber team, and then next year we're a Super Bowl contender, like, and then the following year it'll, you know, it just continues to repeat itself. Like, I'm just trying to understand how we're supposed to get to that point.
The Vikings are very good at. Sorry, let me just fit one more point in.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Vikings are very good at fixing the problems right in front of their face. So if you think about 2015, they were good. They made the playoffs. Okay, 2016, they lost that quarterback, and they had a bad offensive line, but they only fixed one of those issues going into 2016 and 2017. Again, they're really good. They're like, okay, all we need is a quarterback. Well, no, you still had offensive line issues in 2017. And when you get to 2018, boom, all those things pop up again. So it's that's why I say we're not handling our success. We're not learning the right lessons. Yeah, look at the San Francisco 49ers. They were injured this year too, but when the 49ers are healthy, they're competing for a Super Bowl. And so I want that to be Mike Zimmer's goal, and for him to, you know, state out loud that when we're good, we want to be the best team in the NFL, not just a playoff contender.
So Nick, I wanted to get you in here because you've talked previously about the idea of ceilings being something that you don't really love. You don't really love that idea. You understand where it comes from and why it's something that has become a part of how we talk about things, but it's something that you don't really love to talk about because maybe next year, like everyone else has injuries, we don't. We win a Super Bowl. Like, do we really still have a ceiling type thing? But when you think about how the Vikings have chosen to construct a roster, run an offense, build a defense, I guess, what are your thoughts on the chosen strategy for all of those things and how they might affect, I guess, the upper range of the variance the Vikings could hope to expect just based on how they've chosen to put together a roster and the way that Mike Zimmer seems to want to run things?
Yeah, I've said before, I don't really believe in ceilings because, football, Super Bowls are limited to it's such a unusual event. If Super Bowls were distributed fairly, you would win one, each team would win one once every 32 years. But the NFL isn't a fair place, and Bill Belichick is in there. So reality, like your actual chances are probably like once every 50 years. And so you're lucky to get one in a lifetime, really. And the fact that like Nick Foles and Joe Flacco are Super Bowl winning quarterbacks in the last decade, Eli Manning twice. Eli was never that good.
Never.
And
terrible.
Jim Plunkett before that. And Peyton Manning, when he threw, was benched in the middle of the game for Brock Osweiler, won one too. So we're talking about does a run heavy offense with Kirk Cousins under center put a ceiling on your offense? I mean, it's never going to be the Patrick Mahomes Chiefs, but you don't have to have Patrick Mahomes to win a Super Bowl. So I do think what they're doing right now, what they have with Kirk Cousins, what they have with Mike Zimmer is a lot of teams who have won but haven't won the big one yet. And I think that's really frustrating as a fan, probably as an owner, for anybody else as a stakeholder in the organization to be like, how do we get over this hump? It's frustrating, but I'm just not sure jettisoning everything and doing a full rebuild from scratch gives you a better chance next year, the year after, necessarily to win the Super Bowl. That's not to say that Kirk Cousins is like a top 5 quarterback. I don't think he is, or that like Mike Zimmer is a top 5 coach. I don't think he is, but I think I think sometimes you got to just give it your best shot every year and see where you can go with that. And you look at like the Vikings Super Bowl odds every year, and they're like, they like have a 5% shot, which is above average, which is that's sometimes you just got to keep rolling the dice and see where they land. As far as like the roster,
but they're not doing anything. They're not doing anything different though. That's my issue, Nick. Is like they just keep repeating their same pattern over and over and over, and not finding any true success there. That's my issue. Is like I'm with you on the like they've found a stability and they found a talented enough quarterback. I believe that I think Zimmer's a good enough overall coach based off of like what he's been able to build a defense, but like they continue to treat this system as like what Flip was saying. It's just a rotation of, well, we were bad now, and here are the areas we were bad, so let's just fill those couple of holes, and then the rest will just repeat itself.
Like nothing else will go wrong.
Nothing else will go wrong. Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen will be perfectly healthy all 16 games, and they'll play lights out the way they did. Dalvin Cook will play 14 plus games, 13 plus games this season. Kirk Cousins will throw for 4,000 yards. Our Danielle Hunter will have 15 plus sacks. Like all these, Eric Hendricks, all these things are going to be consistent every year, no matter what. And because we have these other holes, let's make sure we fill those small holes that we have that were bad from 2020. We'll see it this year. Interior defensive line and pass rush, maybe add another corner, and then they might add another offensive lineman. And that'll be like the just of like what the offseason looks like. And then they'll be better than they were in 2020, but they still will peak themselves out because we'll see an issue happen. We'll see something go wrong, like an injury or a player regresses. Like those things are bound to happen in certain areas. And it just feels like they're not willing to hedge their bets on anything other than fill the current holes of the negative that we had now. Sorry to interrupt you there too.
No, you're totally right. But I think this year they went into it knowing that the current formula wasn't going to work. So let's get rid of all our starting cornerbacks. Let's get rid of Linval. Let's get rid of Griffin. Let's have a full reset on the defense, and let's try and rebuild it. And that's really what this defense was this year, was a rebuild. And then it had the bad injury luck on top of that.
and traded for Yannick Ngakoue to let us know that they were rebuilding.
That's fair.
I
You
think
know they had a shot to compete for a playoff window coming in, and they probably misjudged things a little bit there, especially with COVID. But to their credit, they got out of it and didn't take too much of a bath on it. I guess I guess I have a couple thoughts. I think one, Zimmer is constantly trying to tinker and refigure and rejigger the defense. Like schematically, I don't think any coach changes his defense as much as Zimmer does. Like compared to any, think of any good coach, defensive coach in the NFL. Like McDermott's scheme is kind of the same thing that he's running with the Panthers. Like Belichick's, I mean, he has a lot of like in-game tweaks, but like he likes to run a lot of like cover one man coverage. Like Saleh has kind of been, I mean, he's adapted to run more quarters, but he's kind of still like a cover 3/quarters guy. Zimmer's done everything, and the fronts are changing, and he does so much tinkering, and he really tries. And this year, he really tried. He did a lot of really interesting things on the defense schematically to try and address holes. So defensively, Zimmer's really good. And then just on the offense, like the offense had its struggles this year, but like every other team that does what we do, the wide zone play action offense, I think every single team is in the playoffs. We got the Browns, Titans, Packers. These are some good offenses. Who am I missing? Rams are in there. Yep. Did the 49ers make it?
No.
Maybe 49ers missed, I forget. So, but 49ers obviously not a bad offense.
The right scheme. Yeah. It's definitely the right scheme.
And like, do they need a lot of luck to go to the playoffs, like to win the Super Bowl? Yes, but that's kind of like the whole thing is like you need Nick Foles to go on a miracle run or something. You need to have Tom Brady and a lot of things need to go right to win a Super Bowl.
Right, but I guess
I agree with
you. I look at 2020 and this year, and I'm probably most envious of the Steelers and the Saints this year because these are teams who they haven't won a Super Bowl recently. The Steelers more recently than the Saints, but they are always there. And you look at the Saints and the injuries they had Mike, their best wide receiver just was a no-show for a significant portion of the year. They're playing a tight end at quarterback for a portion of the season and just going back through Saints playoff history. I mean, 3 heartbreak playoff losses in a row. And that team is still showing up and making it back to the playoffs every single year. Same with the Steelers. They didn't make the playoffs last year, hurt quarterback, but they're a perennial playoff contender. So my thing with Mike Zimmer is like, look, if you can't raise your ceiling, then raise your floor. That's why 2020 is a failure because we know that maybe it's going to take 10, 12, 15 shots for the Vikings to go on a playoff run. But we're only getting to the playoffs every other year. So we're not getting the roll of the dice as much as we should. So raise your ceiling or raise your floor. You got to give me one of those.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. When I think of the Saints, I think back to, they had 3 7-9 seasons in a row with Drew Brees and Sean Payton and like a historically bad defenses every year. But people were like, why can't Sean Payton get it together? What else do we need to do? Do we need to make a change here? But they stuck with it and they're back to being contenders. And part of that was they had a knockout draft in 2017. That's kind of what you hope. The reason the Saints are so good right now is they have probably top to bottom the best roster in the NFL. And they're just so good at every position.
And there's depth, but there's depth too. That's
exactly.
Right.
Exactly. There's that. They've got backup quarterbacks. Right. They've got backup everything. So backup running backs. So the depth is crazy. So
the Saints are Saints
aren't fragile in how they built their team.
No, but they're also the idea. Like the Vikings have been all in since 2016. We can all agree on that, right? Like no, you can't tell me even in 2020 you could say the defense and all that, but overall like their philosophy has been all in the last since 2016. I'd say because of how the talent they've had on their roster. The moves they've made to help improve their roster, and then obviously 2018 even enhanced that even more because of the Kirk Cousins situation and all that. So they've been in all-in mode since 2016. But there's all-in mode with what the Vikings have done, and then there's the all-in mode with what the Saints have fucking done. The Saints are literally going to be in cap hell for the next 5 years. I don't know. That might be a little excessive, but like their cap situation, they continue to kick the can down the road, and they're like, hey, we don't care. We have Drew Brees now. We're going to do everything we can to build the perfect roster around Drew Brees to make sure that we have a talented enough team to get us in the playoffs, to get us as far as we can. Obviously, the hope is the Super Bowl. Like when I think of all in, the Saints are literally all in. And at least for me, like, yeah, when that bottom drops out, it's going to drop out hard for the Saints. But if they find a way to win a Super Bowl this year, it's going to be all worth it. And at least to me, if you're at least willing to make some of those sacrifices at a time where you're all in, I'm all for it. Like, and again, we're going to be talking shit about the Saints in a year or two when they're bad and whatever, just because they don't have any money to do anything. But
Taysom's
at least
running triple option.
At least they went for it, and I'm all for the idea of going for it. Like like your point, Nick. You only get so many opportunities, and to your point, Flip. At least when you get into the dance, you got a chance. Like you have some sort of chance. Like you
got to do one or the other.
Sure, that's for sure.
Is my point. But
yeah. So obviously, we just had a commenter give us a wonderful segue into kind of the next topic, but also something I think that ties back to this one is that there's been no consistency. And so that's one of the things that as we get to this point that I'm starting to wonder about a little bit. Like, Nick, you say you don't believe in ceilings, but it feels like the Vikings are manufacturing difficulty. Like they're ramping up the difficulty setting on themselves. Like if the quarterback is the most important position, I think everyone will agree about that. Like not going to find too many people saying at this day and age that the running back or something like that is more important. So quarterback is the most important position. Kirk Cousins, many of us were detractors before he got here. I think it's fair to say he's played above the level of our expectations since he got here. And I think we all pretty much know Kirk Cousins is going to be the guy for the foreseeable future here. Like that's just what it is. So if that is where we're at and Kirk Cousins is the quarterback, do you hit a point where you have to say, like, we need to do, like Myles was saying, everything we can while we have this quarterback to make that quarterback as successful as he can be? Like, we just need to go all in however we can. And I feel like a big part of that has to be like getting some consistency for Kirk Cousins, where it isn't a different voice in his ear, every year, every other year, calling the plays, different tweaks, slightly different verbiage that you got to learn. Like at some point, is that something that starts to weigh into how you think about, the value that Zim obviously brings from a defensive perspective, but the fact that like, yeah, we are making it more difficult on our quarterback seemingly every year. Like, how do we start to balance those things over time? If, we're riding with Kirk Cousins, that's where it's at. At what point do we like have to say, okay, we need to prioritize him, his success above everything else if we're going to be successful as a team?
Yeah, well, I think they're trying to do that. They're having some bad luck with the offensive coordinator turnover, but they're trying to surround Cousins with the right. I mean, look at his weapons. Justin Jefferson would, a guy they drafted in the first round this year to add to his weapons. Dalvin Cook, a guy they signed up long term, who's probably, if not the best running back in the NFL, he's certainly in that top tier. Adam Thielen, who's very good. I mean, he's going to be 31 next year, but he's still a very good receiver. Was what, like third or fourth or fifth in touchdown receptions this year. So a very good weapon. And Irv Smith kind of had a breakout year. So they're trying to build weapons around him and a system around him. And on top of how much they've invested in the offensive line last 3 years, Bradbury first-round pick, O'Neal second-round pick, Ezra Cleveland second-round pick. So they're trying to invest in the offense. It's just tough with the offensive coordinator position because they're either JDF was fired. Kubiak sounds like he's retiring. I mean, it's not confirmed yet, but it really sounds like he's leaning towards retirement. But like, I guess it's a good problem to have that like Stefanski got hired away and it looks to be the coach of the year favorite. It's a good problem that Pat Shurmur got hired away. If there's one thing that gives me confidence, it seems to like Zimmer and Spielman know how to like find good OCs for the most part. Like JDF was obviously the big bust in the bunch, but he was also the belle of the ball that offseason, just coming off a Super Bowl ring. Was like sort of the red zone coordinator for a very efficient offense, was the QB coach for Wentz, who had this breakout MVP caliber season. So I guess I don't fault him for taking the cheese on that one. But like Shurmur was a great hire, and Stefanski was a great promotion. Kubiak was a fantastic find. I hope they'll find somebody else. It sounded like from the press conference today that Zimmer was all in on the wide zone play action offense. So I don't know if that's Clint Kubiak. I'm hoping it's not Rick Dennison because he hasn't been too impressive in his previous stints at OC. But like, I think they're going to try and give Cousins some continuity here. It does stink though that like Zimmer has had such bad luck, and that when you have a defensively minded head coach, this is kind of what you have to face. But I mean, at the same time, like this is just when you have good coordinators, they get poached, and that's true for offensive coordinators too. It it looks like Shanahan's going to lose Saleh, and that'll be a big loss. We'll see if the 49ers defense can keep up after they lose him. You know, it looks like Sean McDermott is going to lose Brian Daboll this offseason, and that stinks. But we'll see if the Bills can keep up after they lose a really talented offensive coordinator. Belichick has lost guys coming in and out, and he's found a way because he's like so good on both sides of the ball. But like that's something you kind of have to deal with, and I do think it's another reason to move on from Zimmer. And I think Zimmer's not a perfect coach as much as he brings the defensive side of the ball. But the one thing that's reassuring to me is they're investing in the offense. They're investing the draft capital. They've found good weapons to put around Cousins. They've invested a lot of good guys on the offensive line. There's still a couple holes on the offensive line, but they're committing resources to it. And they have a pretty good track record finding offensive coordinators in the past. So I guess that's the kind of the story of the offseason. So we'll see how it goes.
I agree. I think the overall picture of the offense is that the plan is working. It might be taking a little longer than we want it to, and it's not a straight path up. You know, there have been bumps in the road, but the plan to improve the offense and make this an offensive football team is definitely working. Now, when you talk about specifically offensive coordinator.
Wait, did you say they're going to make this an offensive football team?
It is an offensive football team.
I mean, it is.
It is.
It is, but that's not what they want. So I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying, like what I heard from Zimmer today was he's happy with where the offensive is, which is I'm not dissatisfied at all.
True.
But that tells me this offseason sole focus is going to be defense. And again, goes to my point. That doesn't mean that offense is just going to refit itself into 2021 and not have any issues. So like that's just where my worry is.
And I have that same worry, but I mean there is definitely the need to find an offensive coordinator that, number one, is going to build on the offensive success and not just settle on what we did for 2020. And no, Clifford, it's not by accident. You look at all the investment they put into the offensive side of the ball, both in the draft and free agency. You look at the scheme they put in place when they got Kevin Stefanski, and they didn't just get Kevin Stefanski, they got Gary Kubiak to accompany Kevin Stefanski. It's not by accident that this offense is good. It is a lot of hard work and a lot of deliberate actions, a lot of deliberate steps taken to make this offense what it has been. So this is not by accident. I think the only criticism you can have right now looking for another offensive coordinator is they've been a little short-sighted, you know, chasing JDF, the hot name. You knew that he was a possibility to leave. He wanted to leave to become a head coach even before we signed him. Kevin Stefanski, him getting head coaching interest is not a surprise to anyone. And then Gary Kubiak, you know, he was basically the coaching version of Brett Favre. We coaxed that guy out of retirement. We tried to get him to hold on as long as he could, but I'm not surprised that he's retiring. So I think getting an offensive coordinator who's not only going to build on the offense, but also be here for a while. And that's why I really like Anthony Lynn.
Bringing the heat. I love it.
I know. That's why I like Anthony Lynn, is because there's a little bit of public stink on him, where even if he succeeds over the next few years, he's going to stay. You know, a lot of people are saying, well, defensive head coach, you're always going to lose your offensive coordinators. That's not true. Bill Belichick has had his offensive coordinator in place for a very long time. Pete Carroll has seen very little turnover on his offensive coordinator staff. And Mike Tomlin hasn't seen much turnover either for his offensive coordinator staff. So there is a way to get a long-term offensive coordinator here under Zimmer, so
Hall
long
of
as it's
Fame
one of their
quarterback
main
then?
goals.
Do we need to find a Hall of Fame? Are you saying we need to find a Hall of Fame quarterback, Flip? Is that the way?
Anything that makes them think that it's not the offensive coordinator doing their job. I mean, great.
All right, so everyone gets one answer, rapid fire. Let's run through this. If Kubiak leaves, Flip, I'll start with you. Who's taking the job?
Who you talking to me?
I'm talking to you, Flip.
Who should or who will?
Who's your pick? Who would you like to take the job?
I would like Anthony Lynn to take the job. I think that there's, like I said, there's a lot of stink on him. There's a lot of assumption that he just wants to pound the rock. I look at what he did. I think both in Los Angeles and Buffalo. I'm sorry, this is supposed to be a one-word answer. I'll just say Anthony Lynn.
There we go. Myles, who's your guy?
I think it'll be Clint Kubiak or Rick Dennison. I would like it to be like an Anthony Lynn.
Okay. And Nick, bring us home. What's your pick here?
Dream pick would be Jay Gruden, but that's probably not happening.
That relationship with Kirk, that
lateral move.
That would be funny. That would be funny.
He's such a great offensive play caller, though. But
I agree.
I like Lynn. I like Pep Hamilton also from the Chargers, or obviously Lynn's no longer with the Chargers.
Him too.
But I wouldn't hate Clint Kubiak. I mean, the story of Clint Kubiak is very, very similar to the story of Kyle Shanahan coming out, where he was working with his dad for a little bit as like the QB's coach. Finally got it. It's like, it's nepotism, but like sometimes those guys who grow up around it know it best. So I don't know. I wouldn't hate it. There would be continuity. I don't like any of the options, but I would be okay with that.
I would be terrified by Clint Kubiak. I mean, I'm sure he might be able to prove me wrong, but I just think it's Clint Kubiak invites the opportunity for Mike Zimmer to cross back to the aisle to the offensive side of the ball and say, hey, you need to run the ball here. You need to do this here. And I think that he respected Gary Kubiak enough not to do that. And we saw good progress from both Zimmer and the offense because of that. And so I really want somebody that Zimmer trusts and respects on the offensive coordinator spot.
Well, I could see too that them trying to keep Gary on as like a consultant role, and then he can kind of intermediate that too, which I'm sure they'd want to do. Kubiak didn't want the job in the Kubiak didn't
People are
want
saying
the job
Kubiak for Broncos GM.
Kubiak didn't want the job in 2020. Like
no. Yeah, it was a Brett Favre move.
Straight Brett Favre, we're back.
It was literally the drive down to Kubiak's ranch in Texas.
Zim sold him a promise of goods that wasn't ever going to hit.
I watched Zim's presser, like end of season presser today, and that the impression I got, like they kept asking about Gary, and he was like, nothing's been settled yet. We'll see how it goes. We have to go back and talk about it and everything. So I really got the impression that like after there were a lot of reports that like it's a done deal, that like Zimmer was like, we'll see. Which isn't to say I don't expect Kubiak to be back as an OC. I kind of got the impression from when Kubiak was talking about it that he was like, I'm saying this in the nicest way possible, but I am spent, man. I am exhausted. I can't do this. I'm too old for this, man. But I can totally see him going back to senior offensive assistant or whatever he was when Stefanski was the OC. And that's kind of like a good setup because, I mean, the thing that brought him out of retirement was he got bored on his ranch or whatever. So if he can just be like a backroom ideas guy and see his son take the reins, I think that would be pretty cool. I could see that happen.
Hire me for that shit. I'd do that. I'll get bored in my ranch.
He's sitting up there, have to get a permission slip from his pops when he wants to run the end around. Like, that seems terrible for Clint. Clint doesn't need to do all that. All right. So the last thing, well, hold on. I'm going to ask Flip because you brought it up and we were talking Zim. And one of the things that you've kind of said a couple of times in passing in either, group chat, DM, things like that, where you have questions of, Zim's ability to really coach up not great players. Like whenever the defense has been great, one of the things that you pointed out to us is that the defense has been great because the defense has been littered with like blue chip type players across the defense. Like the defense was great when like all the cornerbacks were first rounders, and Harrison Smith and like whoever's beside Harrison Smith doesn't matter. But then like Anthony Barr, Kendrick, it's all young blue chip type players. And so, yes, from a schematic perspective, Zim does a lot of amazing things. But you were asking the questions like, is there evidence that Zim can take less than great players and scheme them to being like an above average defense? Like the way that people may talk about like Kyle Shanahan on offense, where he can take just like whoever and like make them productive. The flip of that is like, can Zim do that? And so that was a question you raised. I did want to give you an opportunity to kind of expound on those thoughts while we were all here together, because I thought it was an interesting one.
Yeah, so to tie it to 2020, I think the question being, can Zim coach up lesser talent? If the Vikings are going to win a Super Bowl with Mike Zimmer, the answer to that question has to be yes. And so we are going to learn whether he can or not the hard way, because Mike Zimmer, he's a survivor. He's not going anywhere. You look at, Eric Kendricks, Anthony Barr, Daniil Hunter, Harrison Smith, all of those guys who we count on, who we're building this defense around. And now you throw in Jeff Gladney, Cam Dancer. Those are all day 1 or day 2 draft picks. And Mike Zimmer just hasn't had a strong track record of developing the day 3 guys, especially now that we're focusing on the offensive side of the ball. He hasn't had the track record we need to keep the defense intact and solid, average, not top 5, not top 10, not elite, but solid, while we invest more resources on the offensive side of the ball. Now, I think about this, and I think this is one area where I will concede to Mike Zimmer, with 16 draft picks or whatever it was coming in, and the inability to go through rookie mini camp. And just knowing the style of coach Mike Zimmer is, he's a teacher. He wants his hands on the guys. He wants to be right there during the rep all summer long. I will say that there's a good chance that he can still perform in this function. But again, it is critical. It's essential that Mike Zimmer becomes a great talent developer, like he was bringing Anthony Harris along, bringing Everson Griffin, Brian Robeson. If he can do that again with a new crop of defensive athletes, then we really have a chance here. The thing that we can't do. Sorry, go ahead, Myles.
I was just going to say, to your point about the lesser players that they've helped develop, Anthony Harris, Afadu Denebo to an extent, Stephen Weatherly, Eric Wilson, like all those guys were their ability to be developed was because they truly got the opportunity to develop and weren't just thrown into the fire the way that they have to now. And I think that's the key difference for me is what I want to see from Zimmer is when things aren't going great, you have some injuries and you have to thrust in some younger guys that have less experience, lesser talent into spots, into key important spots. I still want to see a decent level of play. I don't want to see the bottom 5 tier level play from that player. That's where I want to see some of that development hit, is when the expectation comes, that's when there truly is that real development. Because to your point, all those other guys that they've developed have been sprinkled in and they haven't had a lot of true starter expectation. Anthony Harris is an exception, but I think his ability in a really strong defense to play next to Harrison Smith has really helped him a lot, which that's not to say he's not a good player and hasn't developed into a good player, but I just want to see it a little bit more when there's a little bit more expectation for these younger players to perform. I think Cameron Dancer was a great opportunity of that, but to your point, day 2 pick, you want to see maybe a little bit more of that from some of the lesser known players. I'm with you on that.
And again, I'm just asking for solid role players. And what scares me is, like Myles said earlier, is we look at 2020, when you're building for 2021, like all these mock drafts that are happening, all these off seasons, it's just complete bullshit, man. It's garbage, because all they're trying to do is just plug 2020 holes. The goal of the 2021 offseason is not to plug 2020's holes. the goal of the 2021 offseason is to build a Super Bowl contender for 2021 and beyond. And you don't do that just by plugging your 2020 holes. That's why I think all Vikings fans, y'all need to go watch the playoffs. See what the best teams in the league are actually doing, because that's what we're trying to build to compete with. So it's not just about going to your draft board and finding a new defensive tackle and signing a new safety and then drafting a new guard. That's not, you're always going to have role players who start for your team. You're always going to have important depth pieces that the coach has to coach up.
Nick, hop
So you're
in
saying
here.
we're not a left guard away flip?
Oh my God.
This team's in the playoffs with the left guard.
We're
You-
left
you
guard
can
away
expect-
for the last
You can
5 seasons.
expect, yeah, you can expect 3 new starters from the offseason. And I'm telling you right now, the Vikings are going to have more than 3 holes. So the gap has to be filled by good coaching.
All right. Flip bringing the heat. Well, let's bring it back to the last thing here. There it is. Free agents. Flip says it's all bullshit, but we got to talk about it any motherfucking way. So, Myles, you've been doing some work on it. Talk to me about some of these players that we're going to try to bring in here with the promise of maybe some Super Bowl runs and not very much money. Who are some of the players, as you start looking in the bargain basement section of free agency, that you think might be able to come in here and do a little bit of something for the Minnesota Vikings with a change of scenery?
Well, I'll start by saying this: like the Vikings, the last 3 seasons now, they've done a good job of at least attempting to make a move for a you can call it a blue chip, high priced free agent, high priced player. They've done that, so I expect that to happen at least from at least one player. I don't know who that player is going to be, what position they're going to play. I expect the Vikings to make a high priced investment into a new player that's not on the current roster. They've done it, and they're consistently done it. Like last year, I mean, Michael Pierce, I don't even consider him a high priced free agent. More of like Anthony Harris is that, because I know he was on the team, but they spent that type of money to keep him. Then obviously Yannick Ngakoue was the other one. So I expect the Vikings to make that type of move this offseason. Again, don't know where it'll happen. But I hope if they were to make that type of move and investment, the spot where I want to see them do it is at cornerback. I think Cameron Dantzler and Jeff Gladney are really good starting points. I really do. I think they're really good building blocks, but they still need a veteran cornerback to really come in here and help this team. So I think for me, if they can, I'm not calling them blue chips, but I think if they can go invest a little bit more money on an Ahkello Witherspoon from San Francisco or a William Jackson from Cincinnati, I think either of those 2 guys could really fill that outside cornerback position for the Vikings, and then let Jeff Gladney work in the slot and let Cam Dantzler work on the other opposite side on the outside. And then I think if Mike Hughes and Chris Boyd can be your depth, you're really building yourself up to having guys that can come in and replace players if injuries happen. Like, you don't want to get it to a point where Chris Jones is your second fucking cornerback. Like, those are situations where you're not going to win football games. Like, that's just facts. Like, so if you can help build your depth by just adding another overall talented cornerback to the room that they currently have, that'll go a long way for this team. So to me, that's where I think they should start. I think we talked about pass rush and getting pressures. I think Zimmer's really going to hone in on finding another pass rusher. Now, I think it should probably come from the interior. They've been so bad on the interior defensive line, like creating pressure. It's terrible. Michael Pierce will help to an extent, but what Michael Pierce is really, his job really is, I should consider him a free agent because he'll be coming in as a free agent. But like what his job really is really going to be about is taking up double teams, taking up space, and helping fill the gaps against the run. That's really what his primary role is. It's not to rush the passer. What the player that I've been looking at that I'm surprised got a little bit amount of money that he did this last offseason was Shelby Harris from Denver. He's the type of guy who creates a lot of pressures. He's the type of guy that gets after the quarterback. And I think playing alongside a guy like Michael Pierce, you could really find that guy that can help disrupt the interior offensive line. You can disrupt the interior line of scrimmage and create pressure in the middle. And I don't think he'll break the bank. Like, he only got, I think it was like $3 to $4 million this last offseason. Like, he had a better season. He graded at 88.3%. That was his grade from PFF. He had an 83.5%, pass
Hold,
rush
hold,
grade.
hold on, Miles, 1 second, because I really feel like Donnie's trying to get Flip to say something, and he keeps like escalating every time. So Flip, can you just tell Donnie so Miles can get back to the free agency?
Donnie, shut up, man. We're trying to talk free agency. Shut up, Donnie.
No, but I think Shelby Harris is that type of player that could really come in and help that interior defensive line, because you pair him with Michael Pierce, and then you got a combination of DJ Wanham and Ifeadi Odenigbo at one defensive end, and then you have Daniel Hunter on the other. I think you're starting to create a little bit better of a defensive line overall. Yet they probably should still go out and grab another veteran edge rusher. Maybe that isn't Everson Griffin. I don't know, but someone that can come in and help on pass rushing situations. If a guy goes down, you need breathers, guys that can still create pressure is needed. Everson Griffin might be able to do that on a limited basis. I don't know. And then moving to the offensive side of the ball. Moving to the offensive side of the ball, we talk about this a lot, Jason. I know, not overly investing on the interior offensive line, and I don't think we need to invest. And I know the Vikings have gone after guys like Roger Saffold. I've heard through the grapevines in the weeds that if Joe Thuney hadn't been franchise tagged by the Patriots, the Vikings were going to go after him. But then instead they end up franchise tagging Anthony Harris. So I think Joe Thuney could be one of those like hypothetical big name free agents they go after. Do I think they should? No. But it wouldn't surprise me.
Baby.
Super Bowl, exactly. But it wouldn't surprise me from their kind of the track record of the interior offensive line and what we've seen recently that they might try to make that type of move. But if they don't, Forrest Lamp is the other guy that I think coming over from the Los Angeles Chargers that could help fill that left guard role. It took him a couple of years to kind of get his feet wet. He had injury issues and stuff like that, but I think he finally kind of came into his own this last year. A little bit an okay overall grade. He had a 61.3 pass blocking grade, which is a lot better than what we saw from Dakota Dozier. And I think that improvement is the level of improvement that we need just to be like competent at that position. And that's all what you should be looking for. And you shouldn't need to break the bank for that position. So for me, that could be a low level, low risk type of move the Vikings make for Forrest Lamp. I think if you wanted to fill the right guard role, if Ezra Cleveland goes to left tackle, I think you could go after a guy like Austin Blythe. He played right guard and center for the Rams the last couple of seasons. He was really good in 2018 at right guard. He's coming from the outside zone scheme, and he also does give you that position flexibility if he needs to slide into play center too. So a guy like that could help fill your position, your interior line. Like we talked about, don't invest high in the draft. Spend some decent but lower level price free agents to fill those roles at left and right guard. Let's do that. That's kind of where I'm at. The last position I think that the Vikings really need to hit on too is that wide receiver 3. We have not seen this team have even a decent wide receiver 3 since Jarius Wright. Chad Beebe's the most recent guy, but he shouldn't be a wide receiver 3. I think BC Johnson's better than him anyways, but that's just me. But I think if they could go and invest a few dollars in finding that third wide receiver, there's a lot of talent out there. I didn't go to the higher level. Everybody's like, oh my God, let's go get Kenny Golladay or something. That's not happening. The Vikings aren't going to do that. I would love it. It's not going to happen. But what they need is a little bit more juice, and they need a guy that can that doesn't need to play a lot of snaps to be effective. There's a few guys on the list that I have that I think could potentially fill that. Nelson Aguilar was a guy who signed with the Raiders this last offseason. He's a guy that I wanted to sign this offseason. I knew he was going to come cheap. I think he got a $1.5 million deal with the Raiders. He's a burner. He's a deep threat. He's a guy that can be a dual threat. You can motion him around the formation, get him the ball in jet sweeps and stuff, quick screens. I know he struggles with drops a little bit, but I'll deal with a few drops if a guy's that explosive and can score, and take the top off of defense. And Nelson Aguilar can do that. But the issue with him is he just put up 48 receptions, 896 yards, 8 touchdowns, and averaged 18.7 yards per catch. So to expect him to come cheap anymore, I don't know if that's going to happen. But he's a guy that I would love to see the Vikings attempt to go after. He could also probably look at Donnie. The dude was pretty good, and you ask him to be your wide receiver 3. Come on now, you're killing me.
He's a great route runner too. Really underrated aspect of the game. He runs great routes, so he's not just run a vertical. He's not
he's not
Sean
the
Jackson.
next wide receiver Miles wants to talk about.
Yeah. Well,
Des Bryant, you got Des on there?
Des Bryant. Des Bryant's the next one. No, John Ross. John Ross is a guy. I talked about the Vikings maybe trading for him, the last couple of seasons. Again, burner, vertical threat. What the Vikings need is just to help loosen the defense up for guys like Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. So if that third receiver can be a guy that can help stretch the defense and help take a little bit of that attention away from Thielen and Jefferson, that's really what that factor is for me. And I think John Ross, he got, again, injury issues.
And he's cornerback depth.
And he's cornerback depth. So, but he got hurt trying to play cornerback. But that's just another guy, low level. That could be a low risk, like a vet min type of move. If you want to see what he looks like in camp, that's something I think could happen. But the other name I had is Brashad Perriman. He was good for the Browns. He was good for the Bucks. And he's another burner. He was signed with the Jets this last offseason. Had 500 yards, 3 touchdowns, averaged 16.8 yards a reception, excuse me. And he's a guy that, again, can be that effective third receiver and can step in and be a wide receiver 2 if you need him to be. He's not just a wide receiver 3. There's ability to be better than that. So those are a few of the names I looked at. The last one was Keelan Cole, more so as I think he's not a burner. He's not a guy that stretches the field, but he's a guy that can get open and he's a good returner. And I think that's something that this Vikings team is really missing is in the return game. So if you can give me a little bit of both, that's something I'd be looking at too. So those are some of the names I've been looking at. And so talking about special teams, Jamal Agnew is a free agent as well. Lions returner. That dude's like the best dude in the league right now at punt and kick. If you wanted to pay a few bucks to get him, he'd probably be a good guy to have too.
All right. There it is.
Donnie does not like
things. We got plenty of other commenters than Donnie. Come on. You all need to drown this dude out. We got to get some other.
I'm here for the Flip versus Donnie cage match.
Well, gentlemen, as always, it is a pleasure. Donnie,
we don't even get to talk about the playoffs.
What playoffs? We're not in the playoffs. Football ceased to exist.
Well, we need to watch the playoffs rather than trying to tell us Jamal Agnew and John Ross got to get on the football team.
There you go.
Y'all's bandwagon team. You guys rooting for Diggsy? You guys rooting for Josh Allen?
Always. Josh Allen and Diggsy.
How about Stephon Diggs versus Xavier Rhodes? Let's go. Let's
go. Xavier can't run with it.
Xavier don't want that smoke, man.
Well, let's see.
We saw it in practice. We saw it in practice for 5 years. A lot of people are
sleeping on that football team. Listen.
They're gonna rotate in Taylor. I kick doors, Heineke. Come on now. I'm supposed to expect that team to win?
Bro, 2010, 7-9 Seattle Seahawks.
Oh boy.
Beat the defending champion 11-5 New Orleans Saints. Okay.
Who's the Seahawks quarterback?
Drew Brees. It literally an earthquake. Earthquake happened in the stadium.
Who is the Seahawks quarterback?
Russell Wilson.
In 2010, no, he wasn't.
I don't even know, but they won the game. They were 7-9. A lot of people saying they should have been in the playoffs.
It might have been Tavares. Hey, I got to look this up.
2014, 7-9 Carolina Panthers. Again, beat Brees.
It was Matt Hasselbeck. All right. See, this is what I'm saying, Flip.
Okay.
Taylor fucking Heineke. Taylor Heineke. And I can't move because my legs, Alex Smith, are supposed to beat? Come on.
Bruce Arians has already lost to a 7-9 in the playoffs. 2014. This happened.
I'm just saying he didn't have Tom Brady. He didn't have Tom Brady.
Give me that football. Give me the football team.
Okay.
Let's see what happens.
Flip just wants it because he hopes that's us next year.
$20. We got games. We got games, y'all. We got Seattle, Los Angeles. We got Cleveland, Pittsburgh. We got a lot of young quarterbacks who got some big games coming up. Josh Allen, he's got to ball out.
Exactly.
Yeah. We'll talk about him next
front
week.
Runner.
How about that?
Y'all are front runners.
We'll talk about him next week.
Next week when half of them are already eliminated, then we get to talk about them.
Exactly. We'll talk about the
we got
lessons
to talk about Jamal Agnew.
Well, there it is.
Hey, you want
Flip is
a
upset.
special teams touchdown flip?
We're
I didn't
getting
even
out
talk
of
about
here.
Cordero
David,
Patterson.
get in here before we completely lose control. David, wrap us up. Dave, you're still on mute. And it's become a bit now, but you're on mute.
Hey, everybody. Once I hit the unmute button, it's been a great show, and I want to thank everybody that's joined us. Donnie, Mark, Alejandro, Clifford, everybody that's joined us, Infinity, etc.
A couple other names.
You guys have rocked, including you, Mayor.
Shout out to
Join
Mary
us for the rest of the week. We are working on off-season content to become more regular and dominate the space. And until then, Skol!
Skol.
Vikes.
Play the music.
Tell me you're not watching.
Thank you for watching or listening. As always, if you like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. And if you're listening to the podcast, please rate us on your favorite aggregator. Skol, everybody.